All right. Good evening, everyone. Today is June the 9th, 2026. The title of this message is There is Calm Within the Fire and Storms. So, today I was doing a little bit of reading a scientific story about the flame of a candle. And I just learned that the flame is hollow inside. Yes, I know I'm a little slow in my science class from high school, but this mystery is true. Candle flames are essentially hollow because the combustion or the burning process only happens at the outer edge. The center consists of unburned, vaporized wax. In the eye of a hurricane, there is also a calm described in the center core, the eye. In the center of a tornado, there is a silence as well. As I read about these earthly, natural examples, I see something so amazing. These things represent our trials in life, our fiery trials, our destructive storms. But in the center core of these things, there is a place of peace and calm when we seek to find. I began to reflect on the scriptures about fires and storms and the themes that remain the same. There's always a peace and calm in the core of destruction, but do we have the eyes to see, or do we have the ears to hear? In 1 Kings 19, Elijah was scared and ran from the presence of Jezebel, who had threatened to kill him after he had recently cast out all the idols of Baal. He was eventually led to the place of Mount Sinai to meet the Lord, just like Moses met the Lord in this sacred place of Mount Sinai. We read this account in 1 Kings 19:11 through 13. The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." And then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake came a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. In the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they went into the fiery burning furnace, burning 7 times hotter. And this is what happens. In Daniel 3, starting in verse 25, he answered and said, "Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." In Exodus 3, 1 through 3, Moses was tending the flocks of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And there the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within the bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn. So Moses thought, "I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up." And finally, we see Jesus as a living example in Mark 4:38 through 41. But he was in the stern asleep on a pillow. And they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care? We are perishing." And then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, "Who can this be, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" What is this theme in all of these stories? Jesus. 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 He's in the center core of every story where the calm takes place in our storm and in our fires. Remember the candle. The flame is not burning in the hollow of the candle. In other words, in the dead center of that flame, it's hollow. It's not fiery. The outside is fiery, but in the dead center of that candle, there is no flame. Remember that candle. The flame is not burning in the hollow of the candle. Remember the hurricane. The eye is calm. And remember inside the tornado, there's a silence. Elijah saw the earthquake. He saw the powerful winds and the fire. The Lord wasn't in those. He was a calm and gentle whisper. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego all knew who was in the core center of the fire in which they couldn't be touched. Moses approached the burning bush with the curiosity of why the angel of the Lord, aka Jesus, appeared to him in the center of the burning bush, but it was not consumed by the fire. Finally, when Jesus came to earth as a man, he was living the perfect example. He simply rested in peace, calm, and tranquility of the one who was the core of his heart, taking care of him. Perhaps the biggest part of our fiery trials, our stormiest storms, is finding the one who is to be in the very core and center of our heart, our soul, and our mind to bring us peace, calm, and stillness. Jesus lived that example. I was just thinking about my trials and difficulties in my life. Did I ever really come out of them? Or did I simply learn to adapt, to endure, to relax, to overcome, and surrender to this trial that I was enduring and trusting the one who really is my stillness and my calm? Here are my examples. What are yours? My divorce was still a divorce. I simply had to learn to change my attitude toward the divorce. The core of Jesus told me to become better, not bitter. The trial didn't go away, but my attitude did make a difference. My prodigal child. My child was still a prodigal, but I simply had to release my attitude of control to an attitude of surrender to God for a child that was always the Lord's to begin with. He was just mine for a brief period of time. The trial didn't change, but the trial instead changed me. My current husband and I having an argument. The trial didn't simply go away, but our hearts and our minds had to change to create a solution to release our pride and selfishness to a place of humility and love. A loved one has died suddenly without warning. The trial didn't change. I just had to realize that Jesus is holding me in my grief and releasing me from my pain over time. When Jesus is the center core of our fires and our storms, there is a calm. Jesus has always been there if we cling to the faith in his presence during the trials. In Colossians 1:17, and he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Psalm 118:8. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man. And 1 Peter 4:19. So if you are suffering according to God's will, keep on doing what's right and trust yourself to the God who made you, and he will never fail you. Remember, friends, keep that light shining, because inside that light, inside our storms, there is peace. There is a hollow ground inside the storms, and that is Jesus. Have a blessed day.